our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Three parishes and many moons ago, I served a church that sits right in the middle of a college campus. It was normally a very busy place. I often had trouble finding a spot to park. But one morning when I arrived, it looked like a ghost town. No signs of students walking around, no faculty and staff cars in the parking lot. I wondered what was going on. And that's when I learned about a tradition at that college called Mountain Day. It's an unscheduled holiday. But sometime in October, the president wakes up, sees a sunny, beautiful day outside, and cancels classes. Nowadays, they probably announce Mountain Day by Twitter or text or something. But in the old days, chapel at that college used to be mandatory. And the president would announce it by standing up at the beginning of the service and speaking the opening words of Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes unto the hills, and there would be a stampede at the door. And I wonder on their way out how many of them heard the second part of that verse. From whence cometh my help? Because help is what Mountain Day is all about. A chance to rest, a chance to go up into the hills that surround that college, drink in the peace and the beauty of nature, and get new strength to face the rest of the semester. Well, help is what Jesus Mountain Day, that mysterious, awesome event we heard about in the gospel, that's what that is about as well. Because 6 days before this, Jesus had asked his friends a question. Who do you say that I am? And Peter, always the first to speak, blurted out the answer that had been growing in all their hearts. You are the Messiah. You are the Christ. Ah, said Jesus, but do you understand what it means to be the Messiah? It means that very soon now I will be arrested, I will be tried, and I will be put to death. That was not what Peter was expecting. He was so sure that he was following someone who was on the track to success, that in following Jesus, all of them were headed for that great throne in Jerusalem, where any minute now the authorities would come and take him and put the crown on his head. He was so sure that would be the outcome, that there was no room in his heart or his head for this bad news. And so he did, I think, what all of us do. When we are hit suddenly by bad tidings, he buried his head firmly in the sand. Oh, that will never happen to you, Lord. He said, you're just having a bad day. Get over it. Can you imagine Jesus' loneliness at that point? When you and I are facing something difficult, we know the importance of having a friend. We know how the simple things, a phone call from someone saying, I'm thinking of you, a card, seeing a familiar face suddenly show up in the waiting room, we know the difference that makes. How those become holy signs, signs that we are not alone, that someone else is walking through this difficult time with us. But no one at that moment was there for Jesus. So God, in an awesome way, supplied that need. 6 days later, Jesus went up a mountain to pray, as he often did. And he took with him 3 of his disciples, as he also often did. But this time, an extraordinary thing happened. Jesus became filled with light. His face, his body, even his clothes, which contrary to all of the pictures we saw in Sunday school were not white. They do that so that we know which one is Jesus in the pictures. But he wore the same ordinary drab homespun they all wore. But on this day, they became so dazzlingly bright, it was hard to look at them. And Moses, Elijah, two figures from Israel's long ago past, stepped out of heaven and spoke with him. Or, as a very perceptive second grader told me once, Jesus' friends wimped out, so God sent him other friends. God sent him other friends. It was such a gift. But it was also a gift for the disciples. Because what they saw on the mountain was really a sneak preview of Easter. That holy light. Those two people who were supposed to be dead and buried centuries earlier, standing there alive and well. All of that were signs that the cross was not going to get the last word. They saw the pain that was coming, but they also saw beyond it, to the resurrection, to the new life, to the glory that was also coming. The only problem was it was so good, none of them wanted it to end. And so Peter put his foot in it again. He said, Lord, it's wonderful to be here. Can't we just stay here forever? Give me 5 minutes and I'll build you a house, Moses a house, Elijah a house. You can just move in. We'll freeze this moment and hold on to it forever. But even as he spoke, the vision was fading. Moses and Elijah were gone, and there was Jesus looking ordinary again, like Cinderella after the ball. And he said, come on, it's time to go. It's time to go back down the mountain. And in that is such good news for you and me. Because God gives all of us mountaintop experiences from time to time. That sudden time of closeness with someone you love, when perhaps the struggles and the tussles you've been with are forgotten, and you are bathed in simple thankfulness that this person is in your life. Or a vacation that actually works. That's not just a change from a kitchen here to a kitchen there, but is actually a time together of rest and refreshment and renewal. God gives us mountaintop experiences like that. But if you've noticed, they never last long. And it's taken me a while to realize they're not supposed to. Instead, they come to strengthen us, to give us what we need to face into the taxes and the flu and the winter that won't quit, the difficult people who are also in our lives, to face into all of that and meet it not just with survival, but meet it with Christ's kind of love. And that's why we're here this morning. God has invited all of us here for some mountaintop time. Elijah, Elisha, St. Paul have stepped out of heaven and they've spoken to us through the words of Scripture. God brought them along for our support. In a few minutes, Jesus will feed us at his own table. And it's all very lovely. Here we are safe. Here we are loved. Here we can rest. But if you notice, we don't get to stay here very long. Before along someone, and I'm not mentioning any names, but someone will be standing at the back of the church saying, go. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord, which is the prayer book's way of saying, get out of here. And what do we respond? Anybody? Thanks be to God. They sneak that by us each week. Whereas I think if we were thinking, we would say, no, I don't want to. I like it here. But we can't stay up on the mountain. Life always pulls us back down into the trenches. But the good news is that Jesus came down too. Just as at Christmas, he left the glory of heaven and made this astounding decision to come and live here where we are. So on the mountain, he made the same decision again. He left that safe oasis, and he came back down to the crowds with their endless demands, down to the authorities, chronically angry, down to walk the hot and dusty roads again, all for love of you and me. But he came down differently. He brought with him the strength and the encouragement he had received from God on the mountain. And it works the same for you and me. This holy hour together here is not an escape. Instead, it's a refueling stop. It's 1 hour away from our other responsibilities so that God can replenish us. Fill us with light, fill us with love again, so that we will have the strength to face the challenges of our lives and the challenges of our world. For the gift of this time, and for the promise that Jesus who meets us here will also meet us out there in the trenches. Thanks be to God. In God's name. Amen.
Amen.